Bizarre Reality Media. The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquires of Reality with Shayn Orin. What is up, Bizarre Society, and welcome to the expanse of deep conversational exploration into the fringes of social norms. I'm the one they call Shane, aka the original Shane Squatch, and today for you guys, I'm joined by Dematties, host of the Biblical Hitmen podcast. And today, we are digging deep into the world of conspiracy theories, exploring into the new explosive Epstein file release and their link into the mysterious realms of AI and the occult. It's a conversation filled with insight, questions, and a few surprises along the way. But before we get into this conversation, just a couple of quick news and updates. First and foremost, on a personal level, it's been a very long time since I've had the opportunity to be able to read some of your guys' reviews on the show. So if some of you guys who listen to the show on Apple wouldn't mind taking a moment to leave a review, I would definitely appreciate it because I would love to be able to get back into that swing of involving you guys and your guys' words into the show. So yeah, if you guys have been enjoying the show for a long time, you guys are a new listener, or somebody that's been around for a long time and hasn't left a review, if you guys don't mind taking a couple extra minutes to do that, I would deeply appreciate it on a personal level. And moving on past that, of course, if anybody is interested in catching the next live episode of Bizarre Inquiries, that'll be happening on March 5th at about 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the usual place, the Bizarre Reality Media YouTube channel. And if anybody has any questions, clips, or articles that they would like to submit for that, make sure you guys get it to us before then. And if not, we'll of course pass it along to the next episode. And if anyone is interested in being a guest on the show, sharing their bizarre experiences or encounters, or contacting me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can email me at inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or you guys could always call or text the Bizarre Reality Media hotline 24/7, and that number is 313-364-1551. And if you guys want to get a hold of me for any professional inquiries, you guys can email me at bizarrerealitymedia@outlook.com. And if you guys happen to miss any of that, it is all available down in the show description and off of the link tree. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome to the show, Dematties, Biblical Hitman. How's it going today, man?
What's up, brother, man? Thanks for having me, and glad to be here.
Absolute pleasure, man, to finally get you on the show after, it's one of those things that we run in close circles, but haven't somehow actually had a conversation. You know, we both know Doc, both know Riley, and that group of people, like everybody is so close and they always talk constantly. So it's always weird when you end up coming across somebody that you haven't actually like talked to when you know that group.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Doc, shout out to Doc, Prometheus Lens, and Riley, Midwest Mythos, man. I love those guys. I've done a trip. We did a trip in Kentucky last year. I think it was June or July. I can't really remember. Or maybe I just got that wrong, that time completely wrong. But anyways, we took a trip. We did a Conspiracy-Con together. We were able to, at least for me, being a podcaster just within a year, and it was my first time to go to a conference and learn how to network with people and meet other people in the same circle, as content creators, podcasters, whatever they do, it was Christian based, and it was a lot of fun, man.
I'll say the conventions are always weird the first time as a podcaster because you don't really know what to do. A lot of the time it's like you got to decide, are you trying to network or are you trying to actually go around and meet people in order to get more listeners? But it's always it's a weird experience first coming into it, and you don't really know how to handle yourself, what to do, especially being a podcaster, because it's most people have books to sell, other random stuff to sell, and you're just like, hey man, I got a podcast, you guys want to listen to it?
yeah I got stickers, man. Here, hit this QR code, man, and subscribe to everything.
That's always the hard part, man, is that you don't make enough when you're a podcast trying to do conventions and stuff, because you always want to at least try to make it so that you have enough for gas and all that kind of stuff. And again, it's like you're basically just giving it up to get listeners, but I guess it's never a bad thing, right?
Yeah, right, man. Well, for anyone that doesn't know who I am, I'm really nobody. My name's Stephen Dematties. I'm the host of the Biblical Hitmen. I'm a husband, Christian, father. I have a career, right? That's my priority. The podcast is, it's become kind of like a side job now, which is a wonderful thing because God kind of blesses a lot of the hard work that you put into certain things. But, the podcast realm has taught me a lot of stuff. It really feels like a journey. I'm sure you can relate to that. You have on multiple different kinds of guests from different academia and scholarship and authors, and you just hear different angles of the world, pretty much, right? And heavily around a topic. I mean, my show's a Christian show, so everything really revolves around that. And man, getting into like Nephilim and fallen angels, UFOs, trying to put things together and maybe illustrate something out of all of this. As of recently, I mean, the Epstein stuff, right? I mean, there's just been a ton load of content for anyone in the conspiracy realm to like get their hands on. So it feels, I don't know, man. Like, is there something to all of this Epstein stuff, files just being dumped out, and for all content creators and podcasting and media to just to get their hands on and kind of just share what they've found? I don't know. It feels weird to me. I'm not saying that, the stuff in all this information that's been dumped is false, but something's up a little bit with that. But I mean, what I think's going on with this situation is that one of the elite just got caught. Like, we actually see someone who's a part of this group, right? This hidden group that's running the world, and you can kind of dig in and see who his network was and who he was hanging out with, who he was funding, and that's kind of been my rabbit hole lately. I've been doing like a live series on it, and I'm trying to figure out really what was going on in that man's head. Obviously, there's like the terrible stuff, right? The sexual, the fornication, all that bad wickedness. But I'm trying to look at an angle of things where people are not really touching on. I haven't seen much on it really, but I think Epstein was like an occultist. I think he was an alchemist in his imagination, right? Like, he's not like a scientist, but he was using his money to fund knowledge, in my opinion, man. So that's something I've been, diving down lately.
See, I'm glad that you're onto this trail because obviously I'm enough of a conspiracy theorist that I assume that when any information gets released, there's some type of like purpose to it. And there's been a million different directions that I can go with the Epstein stuff as far as like, when there is this giant structure of all these different things that are happening as far as this guy's connected to this guy's connected to this guy, if there is a target on their back, of course, once in a while, they're going to have to toss a guy out. But I think that they do it strategically so that there's no involvement as far as like the people that are actually running the group. They kind of just give out like the lower guys in order to just make it so that they at least have some kind of a scapegoat or somebody to look at. But lately on this one, though, I've been kind of going in a bit of a different direction. That I think the whole intention on this one is that it's what you're seeing with a lot of stuff now. They're just trying to throw so much information that you don't know what direction to go with it. And in turn, with having so much information thrown out, they're able to like spin and control a narrative going into a certain direction. And it's like, realistically, I mean, obviously everybody, when they hear about the Epstein stuff, the main thing that you're thinking about is all the sexual stuff. And I'm not going to say that that's not obviously completely terrible, but according to like the normies, that's like the absolute worst to like the normies. But when you start actually breaking into some of the stuff that Epstein was actually doing, I'm wondering if all of that stuff is more so intended to draw the narrative away from like the deeper stuff that he was actually doing. Because like you were kind of mentioning, he was a eugenicist, he was an occultist, he had a bunch of other weird stuff that was going on in the background. Like one of the primary things was, everybody's hearing about this whole thing with Life Touch. he's making this like categorized thing of like all these children where they exist at. That isn't even the first thing that he's had hookups on. He's been trying to was trying to develop this like art AI friend for kids. And in turn, it also would have like categorized where kids were. It would have had their locations. It would have actually started like putting down like a track record of all the things that they like, all the different things that they're into. So one, he's also trying to connect in with all of these kids and actually get a documentation on where all of these different kids are, which I think goes into a bit of like a psychological operation, because if you can actually get these kids young, then you can actually start putting different philosophies on them, and then you can start pushing them into different directions, which starts getting into like the eugenicist side of his things, where, some of the weird stuff that was starting to come out that I hear people starting to talk about is this whole idea that he was trying to like inseminate women with his genetics, and he was trying to produce like more genetics that were his genetics. There's more of an extension to that. It's not even just his genetics. It's this whole idea about eugenics and trying to have like the best possible genetics and working at this better and better genetics. Like when you start diving into all this stuff he was into, I think that the bottom of the barrel realistically is like the sexual stuff, because I think that was intended to be the blackmail entrapment to get the real power, and the real power that he was actually intending to get into was all of this stuff with AI tech, with eugenics, and getting into like the psychological like brainwashing of like the younger generation for whatever malicious purpose. But I think that goes beyond grooming. I think it's also intended to be almost like setting the stage for the next generation as far as like, getting the next idea ready for the elites. Like, I think this, again, was a way bigger operation than what people let it off to be. But of course, if you push the direction into one way, nobody's looking into all this weird stuff. Not to mention, a lot of the time when you start looking into like AI and all that kind of stuff, like us conspiracy theorist type guys are worried about it, but most normies, it's like, oh, Epstein was into AI, whatever. But we start diving into it and we find all the weird stuff about why he was diving into AI and all of the connections he had into all of these different colleges, all of these different tech programs, all these different science programs. Like, yeah, a lot more to this whole thing than what people actually realize. But they threw out so much information and so much fluff in the process that I think it's basically just like a chaos theory. Basically just throwing chaos theory at people at this point.
No, yeah. I mean, it can be toxic, right, in the wrong hands. And with the things going on with the children and the trafficking, the system that's behind it, obviously I don't think it's new. I think it's something really old. It could be hundreds of years old. Who knows? Thousands of years old in that area. We don't even really know. But I think that Epstein and Ghislaine, from some of the things that I found and some of the things that people have parroted, it comes to be true. But both of them were pretty obsessed with Atlantis. There was statues of Poseidon and centaurs on the temple, and
didn't they have connections in with Maria Abramovic too? Just, I think that there was stuff that came out in the Epstein files recently about her being connected in with them too, right?
Oh, I mean, I think a part of the trafficking situation, what was going on, is that I think a big part of that could have been because of finance and money, right? There's always a business behind it. But I also think that it plays a huge role in like sex magic and rituals and a lot of things that people really don't think of, but these people think of it.
Babylonian mind splitting, if you get into the fact that he's actually trying to produce like his generation, like another, like again, getting into the whole thing about him trying to like inseminate women with his seed. The intention with that, of course, is that you're going to start fracturing their mind at a young age, which gets into some occult stuff, some psychology stuff.
He wants to fracture the minds, right? Because if you think of, just for example, ESP and psionics and how really you put people, it's almost like Stranger Things, right? You put people through, young kids through such trauma, right? And not only number one for adrenochrome, but also you can get these kids to start to experiment and access parts of the mind that they never really thought were there, never even knew that it existed, actually hidden parts of the mind, right? Like things that Epstein referenced as dark brain on his chalkboard, or he even referenced it to, dark matter in the brain on the Bannon interview. And he was obsessed with it. And I think there's something to the dark brain. I think it's another comparison to the pineal gland that New Agers will talk about. But there's like this hidden subconscious, there's like this dark matter in the brain that they can't measure it and they can't mathematize it. Therefore, they really even Epstein looked at it along with like Newton and other things, that something of this concept would be like a miracle. Having, for example, kids with ESP or the telepathy tapes, and having these kind of like superpowers or special abilities, they're pushing something with that agenda, right? There's not only something to it, but they're pushing a narrative with it. Now I'm starting to see it, because one of the doctors, I forget her name, but she was just on Danny Jones's podcast, and she was in the files, going back and forth, not emailing Jeffrey Epstein, but emailing his assistant, to get them to talk with each other. And she is involved with special needs kids and other youth, where she runs these programs, and she sees how these kids have these abilities and they're able to do this. They'll hook up things to their brains and see weird, unique activity going on in the brain during these scenarios being played out. And I draw a connection with that and the guy, Bashar, right? The guy that channels this extraterrestrial non-human intelligence. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So they've also hooked him up to these, I don't know what they read, but they're little stickers that go on your head and stuff, and they read brain activity. And when he gets into these channeled states of mind, his brain activity changes, the melatonin moves. It's like there's interesting things that actually take place in the brain. Now, is this a part of the occult? Yeah, absolutely, right? But it's starting to be kind of pushed on that we all have this ability, and it's Gnostic in nature, because it shows that we all kind of have this divine spark. We just have to like find it and enlighten ourselves to it. Now, Epstein was trying to do the same thing. He was trying to figure out his own dark matter, right? Why do you think he had a temple that had marble lining around the inside of the structure with 2 Freemasonic pillars in it and a mattress right there? Like that looks to me like a good stage for sex magic and divination, right? It's why does he have the zodiac, characters and symbols on the ceiling? It's just an apotheosis theme. And I think he was into that stuff, but he funded a lot of people in the scientific network that are quantum physicists, and I mean, so deep into the science field. One of them is Professor Randall, which she gets into what's known as dark matter and dark energy and the construct of the universe, pretty much. And he was in the files. It shows that he's at a lot of her seminars. He's at a lot of her lectures, and he was trying to figure this out, because I think he's trying to put 2 and 2 together here. There is something to this darkness and to this part of the material realm that we can't see, that doesn't react with light, that flows through us and that is around us, and that is holding the universe basically together like a womb. And I think the Gnostics call this Sophia, and I think there's a big divine feminine aspect behind all of this. I even think there's a divine feminine aspect, symbolism behind the temple itself, resembling the high priestess of the tarot card, right? Blue and white colors. And then also the fact that there's centaurs and Poseidon. Centaurs are represented to actually lift up Aphrodite from Greek mythology. So, and plus the dome and the temple looking like it comes from Islamic culture, which that style does. It's actually related to bathhouses that were in Islamic nations, and in those times, in that Arabic time, they actually were worshiping Hadad, and Hadad is closely connected with the same god as Baal and all that stuff, right? So the dome on top of the temple resembles as well like the womb. Right, the womb of Isis. If you're talking about the ancient Osiris ritual with the dome and the obelisk, it's resembling a divine feminine aspect to this. And here's the thing with the occult and what they believe with this dark matter of the brain, dark light, astral light, whatever they want to call it, force. I mean, I think Star Wars does a pretty awesome job at describing what these occultists believe in. And they believe in a force. They believe it runs through us. It binds us, right? Isn't that like an awesome scene from Star Wars but it's actually talking about like this power that the alchemists have been trying to, find and create for, I mean, thousands of years, man, thousands of years. And I know that was a pretty long-winded, thing about Epstein so far, but these are some of the things that should tickle the curiosity of people maybe listening to this show or whatever. So you can kind of switch the angle a little bit and maybe figure out this side of Epstein, because it speaks a lot, man. It speaks about how the elites think as well, right? Like you have hobbies, right?
Yeah, of course.
What do you like to do?
This.
Podcasting, right? We'd like to podcast. Well, these people like to probably worship Baal, run a sex trafficking ring, sacrifice children, and use these things in ritualistic practices to not only bring things into this world, seek knowledge and divination, but they're trying to become God. And it's wild because it gets into like the philosopher's stone idea. It gets into the elixir of life, the fountain of youth. The alchemists were trying to either play with the elements of life, throw them together, pull them apart, whatever, to create the ether, right? Which is like this force, so that they can extract these things, which I think that's kind of like what science is talking about with 0-point energy today. They're actually talking about extracting this energy out of this vacuum of space. It's like wild stuff, man.
I mean, the 5G stuff's supposed to be like synthetic ether. I mean, just to throw that one in there.
Well, right? It's energy that things. It's force, man, and I think it's a part of our creation. But I think Lucifer is using it in such a way so that he can use it to deceive mankind that this is what it's going to take to integrate with humanity, to enlighten you, right? To bring you to that full evolution of that transhumanist state. Like, you know what I mean? Singularity, right? There is an end to this. It's not just like it's going to keep going on and on and on. It's like the Lucy movie, at the end of the movie, she reaches 100% and boop, that's it. Mission accomplished, right? And I think that's what these occultists, these elites, these people that want to solve the mysteries of the universe, man. This is what they're after. It's so funny in the movie Titanic, right, with Leonardo DiCaprio, which he's like considered to be in this like slave class, right? And he sneaks on this boat with all these elites, and when he's on the boat, he becomes friends with the daughter of this rich family, right? And she invites him to dinner, and they go to dinner. And Leonardo's at the table with all these elites and the DuPonts, whatever. I forget who exactly was on the Titanic that day, but it was some of the richest people in the entire world that owned pretty much over 70% of the banking system. And these gentlemen are asking Leonardo, "Hey, what do you do?" And Leo's like, "I don't know, I sell apples or something," right? But and like he's still got dirt on his face, right? And they're just like, "Whoa." Anyways, the men stand up and they leave and they go away. And Leonardo's like, "Where are they going?" And one of the other wives at the table says, "They're going to solve the mysteries of the universe." And so that shows you the mindset a little bit of what these elites and these powerful, rich, either Luciferians or Satanists. I mean, I don't know. It can be a Freemason, right? The mysteries go many different ways, but I think they are running this world, man. I think that's why we see the network that was around Epstein. It was just one guy, and that's how much baggage he had, right? That he can pull around and do whatever he wanted with it, meaning he can manipulate all these people in these positions of power and all this stuff. That's just one guy. How about the rest of them?
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to the show. I mean, I feel like that was his job. I mean, I feel like it's like a giant house of cards, and everybody has their specific compartmentalized role that they play in this thing. And I've said it a few times on the show, but I think that like Hugh Hefner was playing the same exact role that, Epstein was playing, in the aspect that his whole role was supposed to just be to get power for people involved with girls that were slightly underage and then farther underage, so that then he can blackmail them and hold power against them. It's just, Hugh Hefner, a lot quieter about it. Every single time Epstein got arrested, this guy's going around saying, you know who I am, you know who I'm connected to. So of course, as soon as stuff hits the fan, this is going to be the guy that they throw out as the biggest fucking loudmouth. Because even on the other side, it's like, nobody's going to believe anything he says. And then when you kind of throw in that theory that he could have been the loudmouth of the group, the whole taking him out in prison concept kind of fits in a lot better, because now, nobody actually hears his side of the story. It's only the narrative that they're actually pushing out. But flipping it back into some of this like occult stuff, this is something I've been diving into a lot lately. And one of the hardest parts to try to portray to people about the occult as a whole is that it's not supposed to intentionally be good or evil. It's just supposed to be something that exists. And unfortunately, people can use it either way. So when a lot of people hear the occult, they assume this like dark, evil stuff. And unfortunately, that's the direction that most of these people end up pushing it in, which is really unfortunate because, like I said, this stuff is not necessarily intended to be good or bad. It's just simply supposed to be just the way that things are. And if you actually start looking into some of the more modern stuff, going into like astrophysics, like a lot of this stuff actually links in with the occult. And when you actually understand that, like it almost kind of becomes weird that it's like a belief structure. It's more so, like I said, just like stating laws on how the reality supposedly exists. But I guess if you state these laws, of course, people are going to try to manipulate them. But talking about manipulating laws, this is the thing I kind of want to bring up with you. You brought up the whole aspect of like this dark mind, dark subconscious mind aspect. And I don't know if you've actually dived too far into it, but the whole eugenesis concept about like dark DNA seems to be one of the things that Epstein and all of these people are trying to get into, because I think it's something that goes beyond just the adrenochrome. I think that part of the reason why they're causing trauma to these children, causing trauma to all these people, is they're also trying to see what it could potentially unlock. Because the whole idea with this like dark DNA idea is that putting people under trauma will start to spark up these repressed genetic displays, I guess you could say. Like, weird thing to think about, but like X-Men kind of portrays this in the movies, because of course they have to put these narratives in movies to make them look like fiction, but they're actually doing some of these concepts. Like, you get into some of this stuff like Project Montauk. You put kids under high stress, high trauma, and then in turn something snaps in them. And in that thing that might snap might potentially be something that's like a telepathic ability. Or if you get into like the mind splitting, it might be the fact that they're able to basically completely compartmentalize pieces of their personality, so that they can run a dark ring during the day and be a normal kid the rest of the time. Like it's such a weird thing when you start diving into the philosophy and how they think that they can manipulate the mind into doing all this type of stuff. Like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. No, because you're hitting a really good point, right? Like trauma is a huge thing, but I think this is how they exalt the trauma. It's almost like from the movie Ghost, right? With oh man, it's an older movie. I forget the guy that plays it, but
it's driving me crazy. It's on the tip of my tongue. What is that guy's name? It's Roadhouse.
Roadhouse guy. Come on, chat.
I'm gonna be so mad at myself for not thinking. Patrick Swayze. That's it. Yep, Patrick Swayze.
Yeah. So he dies and he becomes a ghost, and he's moving all through the astral realm, right? Pretty much, and in this movie, he's in the subway and he comes across another ghost, but he sees that this ghost is able to manipulate matter in his spiritual form, right? He's able to like push newspapers out of people's hands. He's able to knock coffee out of someone drinking it. And so Patrick Swayze's like trying to get the knowledge from this guy, and the guy won't give it to him until he actually, until Patrick Swayze literally almost presses him enough to threaten him, and it gets his attention. But what he was being taught in that moment was like a traumatizing scenario. And I say this because the other ghost that was able to access these abilities, he was explaining to Patrick Swayze that you have to like harness all your fear and all your troubles and everything, and you got to put it in your gut, right? Which it's kind of like your root chakra, right? This is where a lot of this stuff just kind of connects. It's all the same system. And he's like, you gotta somehow conquer it, but you gotta go through the fire first. And it's like this phoenix rebirth process. And it actually matches really well, man, with why Epstein was in all this stuff. And it matches really well why on his chalkboard he had Axiom of Maria with a line drawn from that to Dark Brain. And if no one knows what Axiom of Maria is, it's an occult kind of concept where one becomes two, two then becomes three, and then out of the third becomes the fourth. And it's so like this recycling process. It's false salvation, in my opinion, but it's how they view getting to heaven. So it's important to them, just like it's important to whatever, me being a Christian, whatever, right? Believing in Jesus. This is their faith and their religion. So it's interesting stuff to see how that side of, the field looks at things, right? Because I almost see in a way that people like Epstein and the conspiracy that's with him, this is the team that they're on, right? This is the team that they're choosing. I don't think there's a moral and ethical background behind a lot of the things that they control or that they do in society, right? It's,
Say they're too attached to the material realm. That's the problem. I mean, you can look at that from a Christian perspective or look at it from a light-sided occultist perspective, that if you're way too attached in the material and the only thing that matters to you is this long life here and you want to be able to stick around here forever, of course, that's going to be what ends up furthering like your endeavors as far as going on the rest of your life. Like if you're way too linked in the material world, then you're going to spend your entire life basically looking for this elixir of life, looking for how to possibly stay here forever, how to basically trap your soul here because you just want to stay here and you don't want to actually see what's beyond the other side. I mean, that's the same kind of concept, like I said, looking at it from
I think it's going to happen too, because I think with artificial intelligence and the fourth industrial revolution and just all of that stuff is to help push us all into that direction. It's interesting when Epstein was talking on the Bannon interview about artificial intelligence. And here's the thing. Before I get into that, the whole theme throughout the interview is that Epstein was trying to hint to you that there's things that we can't explain that exist and are happening, and he's calling it miracles. And he says that the soul is one of these things. And he says that the soul is connected to this dark matter or this dark brain, right? It's the same kind of concept. But when he's getting into artificial intelligence, he funded a lot of people. One of these people was Marvin Minsky out of MIT. He actually created the first of the artificial intelligence. This was I think in the 80s. And Marvin Minsky has, bloodline connections to a really old, ancient, not ancient, not really old, but 16th century rabbi Judo Low. And Judo Low was in Prague at the time, and it was in this era. But the Jews were being persecuted pretty heavily. And what Rabbi Judo Low did was he actually started to. He was a Talmudist, he was a Kabbalist, right? And a mystic. So he started practicing a lot more Kabbalah and doing rituals, right? And so he actually created out of mud near a river with some of his family what is known as Golem. And what happened was he basically kind of gave life unto this image, right? Which we can see happening in Revelation 13, that the false prophet gives life unto the image of the beast. But anyways, and he as this thing is coming to life, right? Which I think it's a Pokemon as well, but it's got he writes a word on top of its forehead. It's called Emmet or something like that, and it's like this seal that's to basically this thing obeys its creator, right? Rabbi Low. He has authority over this thing. So this thing actually helps the people. It lowers the persecution. It helps the towns. It helps everyone, right? This was such a great idea, but then it goes rogue, right? This thing goes rogue and starts destroying everything and starts taking everything down. And how, Rabbi Low stopped this was he just erased the first letter that was on the seal of its forehead, and it basically shut down the golem. But if you take that concept and the connection with Marvin Minsky and him developing the first AI, this then connects to how Epstein is talking about artificial intelligence and how he's describing how they set it up and how the network works, and that you've got all these systems and they're complex, but then in these systems, you've got like these neural nets that really help navigate all the systems work together. And the neural nets are called neural nets because they're created after the brain, right? The anatomy and the physics of the brain. And he's talking about how artificial, and the people who create artificial intelligence, they can tell you how this thing got, calculated certain things or whatever, or how it can retrieve certain information. But the people that create these models, they can't tell you how it gives you the answer that it does. So he's kind of saying that this is something that we can't measure, we can't calculate, we can't figure out or understand, and therefore it's a part of this realm that really it's all quantum. We can't see it, and it exists. So I mean, this kind of pulls me into the direction with Gordy Rose, who I think he used to be the CEO for D-Wave, which is a quantum computing chip company, one of the first ones. But he's even given lectures and seminars and Q&As where he's talked about that the whole purpose behind quantum computing is to power, computing power at such a high rate, right? That basically something that will take your computer 30 years to do, the quantum computer can probably do it in 10 seconds. So he's saying that basically it'll have so many possibilities on hand, and this is kind of like quantum, right? If we're talking about a qubit, it's like a coin that's just constantly flipping, and really you just there's so many possibilities for it to be what it is. It's not the normal. It's not the normal 0 and 1s, right? It's like it's a little more complex than that. But he's talking about that there's going to be non-human intelligence coming through this stuff, and that there's going to be a future, and he says soon, which I'm like, what the heck do you mean by that? Because he's talking about that there will be a future where there will be humanoid robots around us with quantum computing chips, basically like channeling in this NHI, and you won't be able to discern it at all. Like you won't even be able to discern if the humanoid robot is a human or not. Which makes me think of like the movies that have come out. I think one of them is Surrogate or something. There was one
Blade
with Bruce
Runner
Willis.
was a really, really popular one. That was where the only way they could tell was from the barcode in their eye.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah, that was the 80s one with Harrison Ford.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, what I'm kind of trying to put in a bag here is that really the idea of Nephilim, maybe channeling through AI is not, it's not much different than what Gordy Rose is like telling me, right? Or fallen angels having the possibilities of doing the same things. It's interesting when you think of a future that's to come with people that are talking this way. Another thing I want to add into Epstein and artificial intelligence. This is something I found myself going through the files. If you type in quantum dots or quantum dot in the files, you'll find some interesting stuff. The fact that I've done research and I've gone on shows talking about this quantum dots and graphene quantum dots and the technology behind it. He's talking about in some of the files where these quantum dots will connect to these neural nets. And it was a theory that I had talking about quantum dots, but I said receptor sites. It's still really the same thing. Neural nets, receptor sites. It's just an area of biology that if you stimulate it, it's going to send a message. So therefore, what's he doing with that, right? We're going to be able to put this black stuff in us, right? Black goo, maybe, I don't know, and it's going to be able to help us access through neural nets and whatever science that is. Can it help us access the dark brain, right? I think that's kind of where Epstein's going with all this stuff. I think he's trying to really do something big, man. I think this is going to put us into like that new age of mankind. I mean, Yuval Harari, right? He talks about it in his book Homo Deus, right? That basically we are moving away from natural selection and we are moving to basically a new age of man, merged with technology. So it's wild stuff, man.
I mean, as a continuation of what you were saying, man, I'm sure you've dived into it, but the whole like homunculi concept in the occult, it just seems like this is all like an updated concept for that, because it seems like with a lot of the occult stuff, it's all knowledge that came from supposedly like an advanced civilization before our civilization, meaning that a lot of this stuff I feel like isn't really like understood, but with time and when things actually start to fall into place, things actually start to make sense. So when you start getting into this whole like occult idea of like the homunculi, or even getting into like the golem, that's like essentially like the same thing. There are these bodies that aren't necessarily intelligent. Like, they kind of just follow along, do whatever they're told to do, but they're like a physical body that isn't necessarily intelligent. So what would be the continuation of this? Of course, you'd want to create this physical body, but you'd want there to be this intelligence to it. So you can either go one of two ways with this. Either one, the updated homunculi is a version where you create the body and then you create a neural network so that you can essentially add the intelligence to the homunculi later on. Or the other option, getting into the Nephilim concept that you were talking about and getting into the whole demon concept about them actually wanting to have physical bodies. You can't just throw yourself into a physical body if it doesn't have the right processing power for what you need. So the best way to do that would be to basically create this synthetic human brain where all the neural networks work perfectly so that another consciousness could essentially come into it as almost like a synthetic body and like a synthetic brain. Because if you don't have the right processing power for something like that to come into this body, then of course it's not going to be compatible and it's not going to work properly. Like try putting a fourth dimensional being into a two-dimensional being's body. Like it's not going to work. You're going to have to try to create the closest you can to a synthetic version of that. So like I said, it can go one of two ways. Either it's a continuation of trying to create a more intelligent homunculi, or it's creating a homunculi type vessel for another intelligence to possibly come in and inhabit.
I mean, think of how hard it was to create a homunculus, right? Like you're Paracelsus and you're trying to do this and you actually kind of achieve it, right? Rabbi Judo Loa accomplished what he did. I think it took time. Imagine how easy it is today to just, create robots. Create certain things out of materials that you can industrialize, bulk ship. I mean, all kinds of stuff. It is really it's everything. Nothing's changed under the sun, right? It's just a different form of what used to be, and it matches up. It's kind of like the market, right? It's like when the market goes up, hopefully your job gives you like more money, right? Right, it gives you raises or cola or whatever. It tries to balance that stuff out. So, I mean, it's a similarity with that. But, let's talk about the idea of homunculuses, Frankensteins, right, golems. They always seem to kind of have some sort of rebellious activity of some sort, right? When we look at the movies with Terminator and Skynet, we look at the movie I, Robot and the AI Vicky. All of it, right? Eagle Eye, right? That's another feminine AI as well. Which I think I think the AI has a huge aspect to the divine feminine, and I think they show this to you in movies, but. But I think what's interesting is if anyone researches Roku Basilisk and what this is, it's kind of basically it's a scenario built out where AI is to assist and help and grow and generate wonders for mankind. And so as time goes on, whoever doesn't obey the system of AI becomes like an adversary against the AI, and then there's this tribulation or persecution against the people that are against it, right? I think it follows a little bit with Revelation and Christians, right? That idea, and I think the movies show the same thing. So my whole thing is why are people really trusting this, right? I mean, we're trusting it now. Obviously, I mean, we even use it for content creation, artificial intelligence. It's just more, it's kind of like,
you have to use it as a tool. That's what I'm always telling people. Like,
Yeah.
even for artwork, man, like when I use it for like the cover arts for episodes, I don't just say AI, create this whole artwork for me. It'll be like a piece of it that I'll still put together as my own image, so it still has that human touch to it. That's, I've been saying this since the beginning, man. Like, don't just throw all your eggs in one basket with this thing. Like, use it as a tool, and then you take what you have the ability to do and manipulate it from there. Like,
no, you're right. Sorry, I had to turn my fan on over there. Started getting a little hot. I'm in Central Florida, man, so it's starting to warm up a little bit.
oh, dude, I can only imagine. I went to Florida once when I was a kid, and it was probably the most miserable time I've had in my life because I'm a true northerner,
it's
man.
hot. Oh yeah, you were not having fun here.
I'm one that could go farther north. Like I could be in cold, like snow 12 months a year and be completely happy. I'm one of those guys.
Yeah.
Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break, so stay tuned. And now back to the show.
And you know it's funny, man, like Epstein, when he was in, and again I'm bringing up the interview quite often because it really laid down a huge the groundwork for whatever you want to look into about Epstein. You can have your field day with it. And he's talking about how, or Bannon's asking him, hey, how did you get involved in the positions that you were in, right? And so he brings up Rockefeller. He met Rockefeller. He was friends with him. And then all of a sudden, Rockefeller offered him a position on what's called the Trilateral Commission. And the Trilateral Commission was something that was created by Rockefeller because there was the fear, businessmen were fearing, things not going well because they weren't a part of politics. And so he wanted to bridge and to bring the two together. Because if you do think about it, people who are in power or in office or presidency, whatever, they're in here for a short term and they're out and they really don't know anything about how everything works, right? And so he created the Trilateral Commission to bridge that gap so that businessmen can be there for the longevity of government and finance. And so Epstein was on the board, right? And this gets into where Epstein was then, I think he bought this property. It's called Zorro Ranch. It's in New Mexico, but he bought this property. It's thousands of acres. And the reason why he bought it, he's explaining that in the area of New Mexico he was in, Los Alamos, right? The scientific research facility, right? It was close by. And Los Alamos was actually cutting the funding and putting a lot of scientists out of work. And so Epstein came in there and swooped up, which there's a lot of weird stuff, man, about Zorro Ranch. I'm going to start investigating and getting into, and I want to add it to the series I'm doing with all of this stuff because it gets into the eugenics stuff like you were talking about big time, man. When he's there in Los Alamos, I think he specifically bought that property because he chose, and no, he says this too, by the way, that he wanted to fund all the scientists that were out of a job, right? And in this same conversation, he's referring to just working on he kept saying strange things. And I'm really wondering if he's referencing to some sort of like this is conspiratorial, right? But well, not really. When you connect everything together, was he running an operation very similar to what we see in the series Stranger Things? I mean, he was saying strange things like constantly, bro. And I picked it up because it was wrapped around the idea of like, he was just talking about dark brain. And then all of a sudden, like this came up and I was like, hold on, this is weird. But it made me think of that, man. And I think it ties in with the psionic programs and I think it ties in with the ESP stuff. Now, here's an interesting part of all of this, right? Is psionics is it's almost like it's a military term for ESP. And
of course, they have to change the terminology so it doesn't all get categorized
like, are you familiar are you familiar with Skywatcher?
Yeah.
Okay, so Epstein was funding Alex Klokas and was funding Skywatcher And
just for the sake of the listeners, in case they don't know what Skywatcher is, if you want to just kind of quick fill them in.
Yeah, Skywatcher, it's part of like this futurism thing. Alex Klokas is like the host of it, but he helps promote the group. And it's basically like this sect of the military that runs psionic programs where they recruit people that have these specific abilities that they're able to do with their minds. And all it really is like a CE5 program. It's another Stephen Greer thing. Some of the Stephen Greer stuff was debunked, but this stuff, it hasn't really been debunked too much. And that they actually go out, they film, they investigate, and they pull data and research from basically manifesting and ushering and controlling UFOs with their minds. And so this is another part of the UFO narrative that we have to think about, because I think it's represented in the Disclosure Day trailer, right, by Steven Spielberg. I think they're hinting at a lot of this, right, with especially Ryan Bledsoe and Chris Bledsoe pushing a very similar narrative. There is something to this, man. Now,
I've had a few people also, just to throw this one in here, just at least like contactees that I've had on the show. They all claim that these ships are flown through telepathic abilities to begin with. And when you start really getting into like the dynamics about how fast these ships would go, I don't think you'd be able to like move your body fast enough to be able to react. So I think the only way that you would potentially be able to fly these things is through having some type of telepathic ability to be able to communicate with it. So that being said, this is going to sound like a totally weird and out there thing, but if they're purposely looking for people that have these abilities, could it possibly be because they're developing these types of ships and the only way that they could potentially be flown is by people that have these abilities, or they have more inept telepathic abilities? And when you start thinking about it that way, the whole calling in UFOs through telepathy doesn't sound like such an occult woo-woo concept. It just seems like if that's how that engine is intended to function, they're simply just calling it in the same way that you'd call a dog, for example. Like, it's not that they're like ushering in UFOs. It's just that they have this technology and they're able to connect with it, and they're able to basically manipulate the engine to come to them. Like, it's a totally different perspective on thinking about it, but it makes a lot more sense if you kind of view it from that point.
No, and I lean towards this being more of, I guess, the factual stuff behind the UFO phenomenon, right? Like, I think it has to deal with the metaphysical realm, which is a realm we can't see, which this darkness and this force, this energy, this dark energy, right, is a part of. You know, Jake Barber is someone who's a part of Skywatcher. He's kind of like one of like the lead whistleblower guys that helps run the group. He had an experience, and his experience starts with him. He's in the military, right? And he's on a helicopter, and what he does is he transports, you know, items, supplies, whatever it is. He doesn't really ask any questions about what it is he's going to transport. He just goes, picks up, locks up, right? And moves the package. Well, when he was approaching a package, he started to have this experience where it was becoming very emotional and spiritual, and that he was encompassed with like this divine feminine love, and it was the most beautiful thing he's ever experienced in his life. It got so at such a high frequency and vibration when he was actually over, right, when the cable's locking into the item, that he's fighting back tears, and he's fighting back really trying to expose him what it is he's experiencing to everyone else around him. And so he transports this package while still having this experience. And later on, he goes to then claim that some of his, up-to-date medical records are because of what interactions he had with UAPs. And there's another Gnostic aspect of this, right, being mixed into the UFO narrative. Number one, that we have these abilities and these potentials that we can access that will connect us to this metaphysical stuff, right? And the fact that there's like this divine feminine aspect of it, that it plays as almost like a medium, a moderator, or like something that is of wisdom, right? Which then you can make connections to Sophia, right? The Greek Gnostics and this terminology, where Sophia is trying to like help mankind. Now this narrative gets supported by the Bledsoes, and they're pushing a lot of the same things. And Ryan, claims that NASA and CIA are all knocking on his doors. trying to get information from them because they have these connections with doing the same exact thing. And I'm wondering if, again, like I said this earlier, like I think technology will push us into these immaculate possibilities. It's almost like a Tower of Babel incident where the people united that became one, lest them be scattered. So let's build a tower, which I think was technology. And God saw this and he said, anything that they imagine to do, they will be able to do. Now, this is how significant this is because, later on in the story, you get to Exodus and you see that Moses threw his staff on the ground in front of Pharaoh, right? Trying to release the Israelites out of Egypt. And by doing this, he was showing God, he's showing the power of God. It's the power of God that is metaphysically through the subphysical, like changing the complexity of the physics of this staff into a snake. It wasn't that, Moses thought of it and did it. It was God's power doing it. But right after that, you have Pharaoh and his magi's that are around him, and they throw their staffs and they do the same thing. Now, I think that the magi's, right, which I think had the ability to access 100% capacity of their dark brain and be able to do these things. But the reason why their staff turned into a snake is because they just saw Moses' staff turn into a snake. So they were able to do what they imagined, right? So it's pretty complex, but when you think of it and the occult science behind it, with how significant that is, I mean,
the power of belief, man.
Something into something else, it's like, it's wild, man.
It's the power of belief, man. I mean, even to get into some weirder aspects of like the Bible, even talking about some of like the Jesus stuff. I mean, when he would heal people, he would say like, it's not me healing you. It's like the power of like belief that's like healing you. So it's kind of like a weird thing to think about that. Again, whether you want to look at it from like a cult side or a Christian side, it gets into this whole idea that if enough people believe, it creates something into existence. And if nobody believes, then it doesn't actually get created into existence. And that can be used in a positive way, and it can also be used in a negative way, unfortunately. You just have to become aware of the tricks before you get manipulated into believing something that's going to cause something negative to happen to you.
Yeah. And I mean, that's wild, man. Now, how are they able to accomplish that, right? And kind of how I think the pyramids had something to do with it. I think something was generating some sort of frequency. Maybe the people had some sort of technology that was able to link humanity in this force, right? And some people had such a depth level of it that they were able to do more crazy stuff and more miracle-looking, more miracles, right, than the younger adepts or whatever, right?
I think people nowadays just tend to doubt things in their subconscious. Like they say, I want to see a miracle, but in the back of their mind, they say, oh no, a miracle is not going to happen. I think that's the differentiation with people like nowadays versus like in the past is a lot of the way that reality reacts depends on what you believe in, what the structure that you give it is. So back in the day, everybody subconsciously did believe that there was a higher power. So if they saw something magical happening, everybody believes it. Nowadays, it's kind of like the opposite, where everybody wants to see a miracle, but subconsciously they don't believe in it. So in turn, it's a matter of like, it's the same concept that if you have enough people praying for something, there is this power in the amount of people that are praying on something. There's the amount of power in the amount of thought that people put onto something. But if you don't believe it yourself in your subconscious, then it isn't actually going to work, which is why I think that like, kind of getting into like a weirder concept of what you were talking about, miracles today versus then, I think there's a lot less now because subconsciously people don't believe anymore.
I think it's circling back around though, and I think that
100%. But
I think it starts with the entertainment industry, and we look at movies and they're, well, for example, just Disney Channel, right? And I have a daughter and she watches Disney, and we go to Disney and we're in Central Florida, so whatever. But the youth is really conditioned, right, to metaphysics. Like they're conditioned to occult science. They're seeing magic on television or possible rituals. I've even seen some myself where I'm like, oh my goodness, like I've seen Blavatsky talk about that. That's wild, right? And it's just like a PJ Masks episode or something. But what I'm saying is I think that we're circling back around to this knowledge, sprouting up through the soil again, and it's growing, and it's going to take time. And I think a lot of people are pushing the narrative. Is we're not just only content creators in the circle that we have, but there's other circles out there. It seems like people are starting to think of this more, and it's almost like the Tulpa effect, right? Where you start to get society thinking the same thing, and it'll actually manifest what it is that they're thinking. I mean, this happened with the Slender Man, right? Like in the 90s, right? It's like the same kind of thing. Even Tibetan Buddhists would do this, would do the Tulpa effect, right? It's where it comes from. And they would actually be able to usher in entities in the seventh kind, right? Which is basically, the seventh kind is like, it's an actual person in front of you. It's an actual ascending master in front of you, and they're able to like do that. That's who knows? Maybe that can circle back around through the voice of entertainment, right? And just kind of get people.
I mean, even making people scared subconsciously of the world around them creates fear in the world around them. Like, this is where like you get into like the dark aspects of the occult, that if you're always showing people how terrible the world is, that everybody's fighting, that everybody's so awful, then that's what their subconscious starts believing, and then that's the world that they start living in. So again, that's like the scary part about it, is that if you aren't aware of how these thought patterns, how these different things work, then you end up falling for the traps of them, which is like the hard part, I think, with like a lot of these content creators and people having all this information. Is it's a matter of, you have to understand the root information so that people can't manipulate the information to you. Meaning that, I'm not telling anybody not to like research something. I feel like everybody should research everything. It's just how you use it. Meaning that if you're a Christian, I still think you should research the occult, not in the aspect of using the occult, but understanding the occult for the sake of, if these tricks try to get you or getting used against you, you can at least understand them and be able to know that somebody's trying to manipulate you or use them against you. That's like the hardest part for a lot of people, is they think that, just because you study the occult means you have to, or just because you study the dark means you have to be dark. That's not necessarily the case. If you want to be a full, well-rounded light being, you have to understand the dark just as much as the light. But again, it's the practice of how you use it. You don't understand the dark trying to use it on other people. You simply understand the dark so that the tricks can't be used on you.
Yeah, it's like, think of it like as football, right? And you're playing the opposing team, but you're able for 10 minutes to throw on the other team's uniform, go and look at the coach's playbook, and radio over to the other team what plays it is that they're getting ready to run. And that's kind of how I look at it, right? Like when you investigate the occult, me being a Christian, people would be extremely against it, but it gives me a sense of what it is they're doing, maybe the direction they want to go down.
It's understanding the enemy strategy, essentially.
Yeah, because they are using this science, man, and these practices to bring in their Messiah, man, at the end of the day. Whatever angle of theosophy, right? Whatever religion, I think everything's being built and constructed to try and bring in some sort of savior figure. And I think we see it in the movies too, especially with, the Avengers movies. We're seeing these movies from Satan's perspective of revelation. So that's the interesting thing, because there's always a Gnostic twist. For example, like in the Avengers movie, right? Where Thanos is on his sanctuary, right? I think it's called Sanctuary or whatever, but it's his ship, right? Which I kind of see as symbolizing New Jerusalem. And he's talking to Thor on the ship, right? And Thor's got a patch over his eye, which is resembling Daniel, right? Showing about the Antichrist and the fatal head wound and stuff. But Thanos says that I am, right, which is a direct reference to the the Christian God. And it's Thanos that's coming to cause destruction. It's Thanos that's coming to to keep us in this
get
prison,
rid of half
right?
the population, which also seems to be exactly what the occultists are trying to do, ironically, right?
yeah, sure. Blame it on someone else, why don't you, right?
Things would be so much easier if there was just half as many people, right?
Yeah. Well, the whole point too is like these superheroes, they go to Earth and they rally the world, not the world, right? But they do rally the Avengers to go to war with this opponent, right, in the heavens that is coming. And so with mixing in the UFO narrative and possibly that agenda, this might add to the narrative down the road. I mean, this might be something to where, holy smokes, like Enki is here and Enlil's coming and we need to go to war, right? This kind of fits with almost, I think her name's Carol Roslin, I think it is. But she was almost like the right-hand man for Werner von Braun. And on his deathbed, this is all alleged, right? But on his deathbed, he tells her that the last card in this whole operation is to fake like that aliens are coming and that we're to go to war with these extraterrestrials or whatever, and that we're to develop, military divisions for space and to develop space weapons and all this stuff. So it sounds like the movie. It almost sounds like that could probably play a part in this coming down the road. Now we've got, what do we got? What's the name of our space division?
Space Force.
Space Force, man.
I'm still looking for a T-shirt of that, man. I've been looking. They got all the Army stuff all together. I still haven't seen a Space Force shirt.
Oh no! Ah, man. Who knows if it really exists? But anyways, I mean,
great fucking name though, right? It literally sounds like something out of like a '90s kids movie.
Yeah, man. But again, that's another weird thing, And then you've got Reagan talking basically at the United Nations, saying, what would bring the world together other than like an extraterrestrial threat. Like this is something that would solve the world's problems. So who knows, man? We'll see. Again, this is just fun stuff to cover and talk about, in my opinion.
It's all subconscious programming because I feel like it's one of those things that they kind of leave the door open so it can be used if they ever wanted to potentially use it. Because a lot of the time, I don't even want to even beyond the occult idea. I mean, you lay some of this stuff into the subconscious for just laying weight, and when that time comes, then you're able to kick it into action. But it's a long run that, you can't just like be flashing these images. Otherwise, people become too aware of it. You have to trickle feed it in so that people don't realize it, but they're so normalized to this concept that the second it happens, their first instinct is to kick into action. But you've done it with such a slow trickling process that it wasn't just like an overnight, like, oh wow, if aliens were here, I would go to attack them. It's like, okay, here's aliens. Okay, here's this. Okay, here's this. Okay, here's this. And then it's like this long run thing to get you so that you're pretty much preamped that the second that moment starts, you didn't even realize it and you're already cocked and ready to go.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Fun stuff, man. So, I mean, we'll see what the next chapter of all this stuff is.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to that deep conversation you crave.
And here's another thing I've been thinking about too. Maybe the things pertaining to Epstein and all the things that are being exposed to the public. Is this a development to collapse society? It just needs to take time. People need to come across the information. It needs to get viral, and enough people are emotionally influenced to.
Or you just set up the house of cards and then you wait for the other 3 million files, and that's what actually collapses it. You set up the framework, and then you always have that escape button whenever you need it. All you have to do is drop the rest of the documents, and you can collapse society.
Yeah, and that's what I mentioned earlier in the show, right? Like take what you want from this. Really, who knows if all of it really is true? But it's interesting. It's fascinating. There probably is stuff to it, but the stuff to it is probably so real that's why it would would collapse things. I mean, maybe that's why Pam Bondi was referencing that the Dow is 50,000 or something like that. But in avoiding these certain questions that the public is, rising to the table, where are these people who are involved in this, and why aren't they being investigated or arrested, and what's going on? And I think they've all been in control of this the entire time. Like, don't get me wrong. I think things are done on time. I think the government is on time, right? They're not like the employee that shows up late with certain things. Like, they're very structured, and I think a lot of the things that are released to the public play in their favor, even if we are ignorant to it, you know?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Controlling the narrative and pushing people into another direction, because it almost kind of gets into that like psychological idea that if you theoretically are going to lie about something, you have to try to give blame first so that people think that you're already like got a chink in your armor, and then you can throw the lie in. Meaning that, you know, if you ever like theoretically get in trouble for something, you got to go, oh, well, we did make this mistake, but, and then you can continue on with the actual lie. Like you have to take some type of, what's the word I'm looking for? Take some type of responsibility for what you did in order to continue the lie further on. Like, misdirection, look over here. Like, yeah, I did this. So they don't actually pay attention to what you actually did over here.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're talking about like masterminds who constantly talk about how to social engineer, right? Like, psychology is a big part of the elite, and they're obsessed with it. You know, they've looked into people like Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung. And Carl Jung's also talked about dark brain and all of this stuff. And it's funny, you know, his books are on Epstein's bookshelf. And one thing I found interesting, because when I was looking at the bookshelf, I'm specifically talking about the library where Project Veritas and James O'Keefe 5 years ago were able to kind of get this insider information and footage out to the public, where this is where the chalkboard comes in and stuff. But when I started to look around the room, I started seeing a lot of statues, and these statues were all specifically a certain color, and they were like this black stain of this color on these statues. One of these statues was actually, it looked like a fallen angel holding itself in pure balance with its legs up in the air like a gymnast, and it's balancing itself on a ball. And I think that's the purpose of the ball. I think that's the purpose of the statues, to show you that Lucifer, that is who that is being represented, is the one that's going to bring unity, the ball being the world, but also with unity establishing balance. And the significant part that, at least this is my theory, right, from some of my research, but the black color of this looks like what is to be known from the Knights Templars as the Black Madonna. And the Templars were connected with the Catholic Church. The Templars also had their occult division of things, right? Very similar to like the Jesuits and the Catholic Church today. There's really no difference in my opinion, but the Templars were alchemists, man, and they were in search of this force, right? But they believed a lot of things that relate to Eastern mysticism. One of these things also like being similar to Shiva, where when someone is encompassed with this force, this divinity, this empowering, this energy, and it fills you up so much, there's a systematic process of this. And I think Kundalini represents it really well, where the chakras start to pour into one another once you start to clear out those gutters, and you get this Kundalini awakening. And a lot of the mystics and a lot of the gurus say that when you are in Kundalini awakening, like there's no going back. It's almost like a bad DMT trip. You have to just embrace it. But my connection with this and the Black Madonna is that she was encompassed with this energy so much that it gave off this black essence, right? Almost like a quintessence or something, like a chi, a prana, right? And that's what they believed about it. Now, there's a interesting connection with the entertainment industry, and they throw it in movies in front of you. And one of these movies is Lucy. Lucy is actually where this, Scarlett Johansson, she's a drug mule where the package that is sewn up inside of her, but it disrupts, right? And it's a chemical that happens at birth that, again, they can't mathematize or calculate or no one fully understands this, but it mixes with her DNA and it fuses with her entire biology. And throughout the whole progression of the movie, she's what I think to be going through Kundalini, right? And she's going from one chakra to the next. The movie represents this as like a percentage bar where it fills up. And basically at the end of the movie, she reaches 100%, and she's encompassed with this black goo, and the black goo fully covers her, and she becomes into this mode of singularity, and she becomes one with the universe, and she's able to actually live forever, and she's one with this force, right? She's what I think she's with the mother, she's with the lady, right? From some of these occult aspects of things. And the black goo shows some significance here because it's a lot in MTV videos. It's all over the celebrities and all of this stuff. And I think it's representing...
In the graphite stuff too with COVID shots, just to throw that in there too.
Exactly. And the thing too with quantum dots, it's also kind of like the same kind of black goo, like residue stuff that it's wild how some of these connections may link together, right? They could be loose a little bit, but we're like, this part goes here. I know it does. But here's the thing. I think they're just kind of dripping this stuff to us. And anyways, that's a little connection with maybe what the statues in Epstein's library were resembling. And I think there's just a lot of connections with him trying to either reach this Kundalini awakening. Maybe he couldn't do it. Maybe he did do it, and he was just trying to do it even better, right? I mean, Alex Jones went on Joe Rogan's podcast years ago, right? Probably 7 years ago. And I know probably me and you have watched the same episode, but he was talking about that these elites, they take these drugs and these DMT and mushrooms and stuff, and they're actually having meetings with like the Galactic Federation of the universe or whatever. And
maybe even adrenochrome, because you don't really know what adrenochrome is like, but the only portrayal that you do have of what it might be like is Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, where he describes it as this very psychedelic-like thing. And that was before people are even onto the whole adrenochrome train. So, I mean, just to throw that one in there, like adrenochrome supposedly interacts like a psychedelic. So, because I've always been in the theory that a lot of these psychedelics aren't actually things in your mind, but you're actually linking into things that are in higher dimensions than you actually realize. And the whole like vibration feeling you get from psychedelics is the literal like raising and lowering of your vibration into different dimensions or states of existence.
And it's funny too, like in the files, if you type in grape soda, you'll see some weird stuff. It ties in with pizza, and we kind of can already go, what the heck is going on here? Beef jerky is another thing that's thrown in there. These could be possibilities that this is representing some form of life, I'm just going to say. All right. And the thing about grape soda, I heard someone talk about this, and maybe there's something to it, right? But adrenochrome, when it's actually secreted and it's extracted, it gives off a purple color. It gives off a purple shine. So this is why people are tying grape soda with adrenochrome theories in the Epstein files. Here's an interesting thing that I did see in the entertainment industry, and it was in yet another Marvel movie, and it's in the scene with Black Panther when he's actually trying to go into the astral realm, right? And he's trying to seek knowledge from his father and what to do with the kingdom. And he drinks this purple serum, man, and he gets buried. And when he's buried, he meditates and goes into this realm. And he's able to talk with his ancestors, which I 100% believe what they're showing us is nothing more than these ascending masters, these non-human intelligences that are trying to govern and control and manipulate mankind, and have been doing it since the beginning, right? We see that, Lucifer, Satan, the devil, he was in the garden as the serpent, and he was there to, people say he was there to enlighten. But in my opinion, he was there to create chaos and destruction. And he did, and he accomplished his agenda for a short time. And his agenda carried on from there, man. It hasn't stopped. You have to understand, when an eternal principality is threatened with death, they don't see it. They don't see it like we do, right? They now know when they're going to die. And they know the time that they're going to die. They know the exact moment they're going to die, and they know that they're destined to it. So that entity, that being, that force is going to try everything that he can to try and mess up God's, plays in this cosmic chess game. You know what I'm saying? And it's all wild stuff, because then you tie in Genesis 3, the seed war. You tie in why the fallen angels came and did what they did. It's all really to kind of disrupt and to cause chaos and to try and kill off the bloodline that Christ is to come through. And I'm wondering if maybe Epstein has any connections to bloodlines or certain bloodlines. I know it was something part of his obsessions, right?
Just to throw this one in there too, because we were talking about adrenaline and achieving 100% and all that kind of stuff. I mean, adrenochrome, just to throw this one in there, what happens when you have too much adrenaline in your body? You basically forget that you even have these like governing laws on your brain. Like you can lift things that don't make any sense that you can lift. You essentially go to 100%, like you were kind of talking about. So just kind of bringing it full circle. I mean, the whole adrenaline concept, what other way would you potentially be able to unleash your mind or your abilities or your physical form in 100% other than a massive amount of adrenaline? That it kind of seems like, again, like it's a full circle concept that I didn't even put two and two together until the end of the episode, but that would be essentially the way to do it.
Yeah, man. I mean, hopefully I laid a lot on the table, and, you know, I can only encourage anyone that's listening just to maybe hear what I have to say and go research it yourself. Because I'm hoping to start to influence, because we're all kind of influencers at the end of the day, even if you're a podcast or not. But just influence people to start critically think and to just really, you know, check things for themselves and look things up for themselves, pull together information, and, you know, start making your own conclusions of stuff. So
I definitely agree, man. That's one thing that I can always tell people is that don't believe somebody off of just their blind word. Like, no matter how fascinating you think it is, no matter how much validity you put into the person that's saying it, always go out, do the research yourself, figure out where the root of all the information is coming from. Because even again, you won't get caught up in all the tricks of everything, because there's nothing new under the sun. And a lot of the time, these new philosophies or all this different stuff that's getting thrown on people, it's just recycling of old philosophies. So if you actually spend the time to actually do the research and understand things yourself, you'll start actually having pattern recognition and noticing that all of this stuff is just continuously rebranding of the same philosophies.
yeah, man. Yeah. Well, you said it perfect, right? Nothing new under the sun. And it's, that's a lot of wisdom right there. And, it explains a lot. It really does.
Hold on tight, guys. This is our last break, so stay tuned. And we are back to the show. So let's hop right in. Well, I guess with that, man, I guess you've already kind of said some words of wisdom, but I'm still going to put you on the spot for another set of words of wisdom. So if there's any words of wisdom you want to bestow on the listeners today, man, what might it be?
Yeah, man. I see the world splitting, and there's two roads, and I think there's knowledge down both roads. I think the true knowledge is the gospel. I think the true knowledge is Jesus Christ, and there's a lot of wisdom you can get out of the Bible. I think it's a great history book, and I think it's spirit, man, and it's a beautiful thing. It's led me to a lot of the things I'm investigating in my own podcast career or whatever, and it's getting into my faith. God's only led me down just a tremendous road of truth and in how the world works. I'm grateful for that. And, you know, as a positive message, you know, we're all human beings at the end of the day, and we all know how to love one another and to get along and to function. And I can only just encourage the world to try and hold on to the order that it has. You know, God is a divider, and he establishes order. And a lot of people might not like that, but it creates the system to function properly. You know, I make a lot of comparisons with my job. You know, I'm a firefighter paramedic as my career. And if there was no divisions and no structure, there's no safety, there's no security, there's no, you know, there's no accountability, and the structure lacks. And
you also lack masters at that point too.
Yeah, you know, that's how the world works, right? It's worked off of almost how these divisions are laid out, man. And just be aware for the world to want to kind of come and unite and to come in harmony and balance. But but look at it and ask it who it works for. And you'll see an outcome, man. But I can only just encourage people, if you're interested in Jesus, man, just start with the Gospels and have fun with it. There's a big rabbit hole down that way. Have fun with it, man. But thank you, man. Hey, thank you for, allowing me to come on the platform. This was the first time we hung out. And thanks for letting me speak. Usually I'm on the other side of things. I'm a host and I don't get enough time to really speak a lot of my thoughts. I'm always worried about steering an episode in the right direction, hopefully. But I love coming on shows and just, thank you, man, for the opportunity and to just be here in front of a great audience.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for the thought-provoking conversation. This is something that I would definitely like to do again because I feel like there's still a million different directions we can get into. And yeah, man, it was definitely a fun conversation, and I'm glad that you have the insight that you do of the world, and that you're one of the people that isn't just out here trying to just throw whatever message you have, because it seems like there's a lot of these podcasters out here that it's like every single doom and gloom message they could possibly have, they're just trying to throw for clicks, for likes. I always have respect and appreciation for the people that are out here actually doing the true research and trying to bring people the true information and not just trying to do fear porn or gore porn for people. So, yeah, man, a lot of respect for you and the way that you do your research and the way that you carry your show, man.
No, thank you, man. And these are natural tendencies for like human nature to fall into. And really, I think at some moment in all of our podcasting careers, we're pressed like with that, right? There's almost like this seduction into like clickbait, right? And I've seen podcasts doing it lately, maybe starting war with someone or maybe doing whatever. And I get it. It's fantastic marketing, but at the end of the day, what's it doing? It's all entertainment, but whatever.
Hey man, I started my show for the sake of having a place to be able to spat what I deemed as truth, or at least fascinating philosophy. So I'm one of those people that I try to stay away from just the click stuff, and anything that I try to bring on the show, I just try to bring as authentically as I can possibly bring. So like I said, I recognize people that do the same thing, and I can tell that you're authentic with the way that you run your show, and I have a lot of respect for the people that are like that. And then again, don't just try to get as many clicks and likes as possible, man, because like I said, it's about getting the truth out. It's not about just simply entertaining people, for me at least, or at least these types of podcasts shouldn't simply be about that. Yeah.
In a little context, like there was a podcast that, well, I was a part of a podcast before the Biblical Hitmen, and I've been doing this maybe 4 or 5 years, not consistently. The Biblical Hitmen has been pretty consistent, but being a part of another podcast, I've seen how it is to kind of work with a team, and then I've also seen. It was more of like in the military police, circle of things. It just got kind of dark because people were grifting off of clips off one another and maybe taking something out of context and then whatever. But it's definitely entertaining. It'll get you to click on certain things. And so then, yeah, I just moved on into doing the Biblical Hitman. At some point I was like, I'm going to do this full time. And so still doing it.
Yeah, that's all that matters, man, is you got to stay persistent and still stay along, because I've seen a lot of really good podcasts go, and it seems like there's a lot less starting up nowadays, man. So I'm glad that you're sticking with it. And speaking of that, of course, half of having a podcast is having people that come and actually listen to it. So if anybody wanted to come and check out your podcast, make sure that it stays alive and you're still going on the internet, man, where can everybody come and find your show? Where can people contact you? And where can people keep up to date with you, man?
Yeah, so it's The Biblical Hitmen, MEN. I'm on YouTube. That's where I provide the video content and the shows. I do, recorded podcasts with guests, and then I do live shows as well. Also, audio platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, and all social medias. I could just encourage people, if you like the show, just drop a review, because it's kind of like the currency that helps push our material out there, man. So
ain't that the truth? It seems like that dropped off a lot. So that goes both ways. Anybody that feels like leaving a review or rating for any podcast, definitely appreciate it. And it definitely goes a long way and keeps the shows alive.
Yeah, man. Hey, again, thank you, brother. I had a fun time, man. And God bless everybody.
Big thank you to everyone out there for catching this week's episodes. Just a reminder, this show wouldn't be possible without listeners like you. Podcasts are a labor of love.
and I want to be able to keep this show going for as long as possible. If you'd like to support the show and all of the hard work behind it, some of the best ways that you guys can do that is by leaving a review or rating for the show anywhere that you guys happen to listen to the podcast. And once I find it, I will, of course, read it on the show and give you guys a big shout out. And you guys can also share the show through word of mouth with anybody that you think might enjoy listening to it, because honestly, grassroots support from listeners like you guys is the only way that podcasts happen to grow, because a lot of the time, no matter where people see it on the algorithm, one of the best ways to get somebody to start listening to a new podcast is directly through word of mouth from friends. So any help on that front, I would greatly appreciate from you guys on a personal level. And if you guys happen to be in a position to support the show and you find value in what I do, one of the best ways that you guys can do that is by donating to the show directly. You guys can do that through Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal, and you guys can, of course, leave a note with that, and I will read it directly on the show, whether it's something for your business, a shout out for somebody, or anything like that. Of course, I will read it directly on the show. And you guys can also go and check out the Patreon, and I recently updated that so that you guys get full access for just $2.50 a month. There's only one tier over there now, just to try to simplify it for everybody. And if you guys want to be able to see what it's all about, there's a 7-day free trial available. And if you guys enjoy it, hopefully you guys will stick around. And the last way that you guys can support the show is through the Bizarre Reality Media merch store. If you guys might be interested in picking up any of the different t-shirt designs that I put up over there. And those t-shirts are just $15.68 plus shipping, which equals out to about $20. So about average for a t-shirt, not too bad. And you guys can support the little guy in the process. And if you guys are interested in keeping up on the show, don't forget to go and follow the show on Instagram and Facebook. And you guys can also catch live shows and video content on the Bizarre Reality Media TikTok, YouTube, and Rumble channels. And if you guys need another podcast to get you guys through your work week, please consider going and checking out my other show, Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin, diving into a lot of the topics that we do over here, just with a little bit of a different spin because it's our deep dives and our research with a couple of guests trickled in along the way. But if you guys enjoyed this show, I definitely think you guys will enjoy my other show. And if you guys happen to have missed any of that, everything that I mentioned is all available on the link tree, which is available down in that show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey, with a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquires of our reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquires of our